Well, good day everybody, and welcome to another piano review video here on Merriam Pianos on YouTube. My name is Stu Harrison, and today we're looking at the legendary Ivory II 2.5 to be specific. This is the virtual piano plugin that has really dominated this market, or at the very least been a legendary member of this market for more than 15 years. They're one of the originators of the new kind of class, new level of plugin that started to creep into the market in the mid-2000s. We're going to be listening to three sample sets today, the Hamburg D, their Bosendorfer Imperial, and the Yamaha C7, looking at its interface, the types of things that you can interact with, and just trying to give you generally a slightly deeper look at what this plugin is capable of and what it's all about. If it's the first time that you found us here on the channel, we would really appreciate if you hit subscribe, become part of our ever-growing community of piano lovers, and by all means comment throughout the video, let us know what you thought. Without further ado, let's get started with our look at Ivory II right away. Perhaps no other plugin in the whole piano virtual universe has had such a sustained level of mystique around it as Ivory. The company is Synthogy. They've been at this since 2004. I remember hearing about this just coming out of university, and a lot of my friends who were getting into the production space, who were getting into studio work, were raving about this. They're talking about, oh, 20 gigs, this, that, and I didn't know what they were talking about at that point. I was completely just, really just a gigging musician. I hadn't got into production or recording or any of that stuff, but I remember hearing about Ivory. Well, they are still a major player in the space, and it's now Ivory II, that's their current engine, and what I found somewhat interesting is they really haven't updated the user interface since about 2004, 2005. I was actually even looking on the Wayback Machine, and it pretty much looks the same as it did when it first released. That's not such a big deal, because after all, you don't buy a plugin ultimately for what it looks like. You buy it for what it sounds like. And man, oh man, Ivory does sound really great. I picked up the 3 Studio Grand pack, or the 3 Grand Piano pack. So this is Hamburg D, Bosendorfer Imperial, and a Yamaha C7. So those are the 3 pianos that I've got loaded into Ivory today. And when Ivory came out, there were some really groundbreaking stuff that they included with the plugin. I wouldn't say that it's now considered as groundbreaking. Now it's almost considered kind of standard fare when it comes to professional piano, virtual piano instruments. Things like sympathetic resonance generators and really great convolution reverb engines included with it, and the ability to edit and manipulate pedal noise and pedal resonance and all this kind of stuff. So they've got it, but I think they do deserve credit as being one of the first to really integrate those kinds of features. And when you consider what digital pianos, physical digital pianos, were sounding like back in 2004 and most of the other plugins, it's pretty astounding what they accomplished. The most recent edition that you can get your hands on, which is this Ivory II, and then I think it's version 2, at least with this pack that I've got, includes several different sets of samples. The most extreme gets up to 18 layers, 18 velocity layers, and then they've got sort of the first batch from Ivory II 1, and then I think the second batch was created specifically because of this. So they do have slightly different characters because they were mic'd differently and captured differently, and you can play around with that. But it is hyper realistic, really hyper realistic. Whether that level of realism is actually what you're looking for in your project is an entirely different story. But it does trick your ear into thinking that you have recorded and captured a real acoustic piano, as long as you like how they've mic'd it and where they've mic'd it. Because unlike some of the other plugins that came out more recently than this, there's no ability for you, at least within the plugin itself, to know where the mic placement is, how they're mixing various mic placements, whether this is close mic or room mic, or whether it's to the side, whether it's player's perspective. They don't necessarily reveal that, but you either like it or you don't like it. So let's load up some of these samples and just let you hear what these three stellar grands sound like through Ivory. So when you first load up Ivory, and we've got it loaded up here in Logic, and this is Ivory II 2.5, the program preset calls up everything. So it's going to call up the studio, or it's going to call up the sample set, it's going to call up EQ settings, ambient settings, and in some case the synth layer. Again, this is somewhat dated, or if not dated, somewhat obsolete, because there's so many great options for kind of synth textures that there's not really a whole lot of point in using the one that's encapsulated within this plugin. I mean, just call up whatever else you want and you've got so many more options. But it's there. I could see that maybe being useful in a live setting if you are really in a resource tax situation. You don't want to have too many plugins running, but anyway, you've got the synth layer. So this program preset is what allows you to call up all of these different things, and they have them laid out in the following way. So we've got the Bosendorfer, and then here's the sample sets identified here, right? So we've got 16 level 1 and level 2, so there's 2 sample sets. There's a third sample set. So there's 3 total sample sets, it looks like, with the Bosendorfer, and then all of these other iterations combine those sample sets with other settings and other parameters within the Ivory engine. Same thing with the German D. We've got 18 levels, 18 level 2, hard levels and soft levels. So 4 sample sets there. And then the C7, 16 levels. Yeah, so the same as the German one. We're not really going to take a look at the synth stuff. So let's call up one of these, see what we're dealing with. So they've really captured the character of that bass tone, that trademark Bosendorfer bass tone. This like brassy, and also, for better or worse, disproportionately large bass compared to the kind of projection you get out of the treble. Super clear, but a little thinner than what you're going to get on, say, that Steinway when we have a chance to listen to it. One of the challenges I'm running into when I'm reviewing these plugins is when the plugin gets so good that it stops being a lens through which it's coloring your impression of the piano it's sampled, it's hard not to have this become a review of the sampled instrument versus the plugin. I mean, Ivory is so authentic and so detailed that it's so easy to stop talking about the plugin and actually you get into these musical preferences between a Bosendorfer or a Steinway or Yamaha or whatever else, which should come as probably the biggest compliment I could pay a plugin. One thing I found about the resonance engine is that it's not nearly as prominent as what I get on other engines. So it's there, but it's really, really subtle. Yeah, in my opinion, probably less than what if we were actually in front of the instrument. The effects window that I mentioned those plugins are calling up is over here. And so just like the main one where you have a sort of a global preset that you can call up, within the effects there's also a, I don't know, semi-global preset that manages all of these different settings. And they're pretty straight ahead. We've got a 3-band sweepable EQ here, low, mid, high, and you can turn it on, off. You've got a chorus effect, probably not something you'd use very often with an acoustic piano. Ambience, of course, you'd likely be using quite a bit. And then you've got preferences in terms of some MIDI assignments, and then some session commands when it comes to your velocity mapping or your touch curve, really, or some half pedaling. So pretty granular stuff that you have the ability to use. Here's your polyphony. 24 is quite low. You definitely want to pull that up to, if you had the bandwidth for it. 96, I would say, is probably where you'd want to be. So that's the Bosendorfer. And there's a few other ones in here. Oh, what's another one that kind of sounds cool? Concert Bosendorfer. So let's have a listen now to the Hamburg D, which I'd have to say is my favorite of the three in here. So let's get this one up. So delicate, and yet the ability to just grow tonally and dynamically so easily. Bright Steiner. Just like a lot of these other plugins, you do have the option, and I forgot to mention this before, of flipping the stereo perspective. What does this mean? Why is that even important? Well, when you're sitting at a grand piano, of course, as a player, to your left ear, the bass notes are going to be really like hard pan to the left because they're coming out of that area, and you're right in front of the tone producing stuff. So there isn't a lot of room to blend between left and right. So you get this pretty separated stereo image. Same thing with the treble, right? Your treble strings are right here, your bass strings are kind of right there. So you wind up with a very, very vivid shift between your left and your right ear. As an audience, if you're looking at a 9-foot that's sideways, well, you may get a little bit of the opposite. If not really nicely blended, you may actually get a little more bass coming out of the right side, because that's where the bass strings are if you're looking at it on stage, and the treble. So it's almost a complete flip, but a little more blended versus performer where you've got. So this is useful for several reasons. One, you may just prefer how it sounds mixed, but when you're recording, when you're actually capturing or writing, most piano players are going to want to have that performer perspective so that it feels truly natural when you are creating music, recording music, writing music, whatever. And then when you're mixing it back, well, that's when you can decide which one you prefer. But generally, you're likely to go with the audience because it's just going to be so much easier to mix. You don't have this like crazy panning going on with your piano depending on where it is. It's a little easier to like position in the overall stereo mix. Anyway, an odd place for me to mention that, but I forgot, so there we go. And now let's have a listen to the 7-foot. And this is a Yamaha C7 Studio 7. Yeah, why not? Yeah, that's a C7. Bright, brassy, clear. Very biting attack. That's what I mean. When you're sampling a plugin that so accurately picked up the instrument, you invariably wind up critiquing, in the positive or the negative, the instrument that has been sampled. So that's Ivory in all of its glory. These aren't the only instruments that are available for Ivory. Ivory is an engine, it's an environment. They have several others, but this one I thought made the most sense to pick up and sample. Ivory doesn't have anything to do with this review, by the way. We bought the plugin, and these are our opinions. So to wrap up today's exploration, this is a plugin with deadly levels of accuracy and true representations of the instruments that they've captured. There's not a ton of room character that they've picked up here. It's a pretty dry recording. Almost all of the ambience that you get here is coming out of their reverb engine, their ambience engine, which is okay. It's not quite the same approach as what some other libraries, more modern libraries, have taken, but it still stands up. And in terms of the authenticity of the capture of the instrument itself, man, they really have nailed this. So I could see myself using this in conjunction with some other favorite reverb engines potentially, and maybe some other EQs potentially, to kind of get the tone exactly where I wanted. But it really does nail the D, the Bosendorfer, and the C7 quite well. So for exposed solo playing, this could be an interesting choice if you want any of those three instruments. I think especially that C7 for pop recording, I mean, man, oh man, you almost don't have to touch it at all. It's like ready for pressing. Definitely going to enjoy getting to the point where we can compare this to some of the other captures and representations of the Hamburg D, particularly the Vienna Symphony is going to be a good one, and we are going to be coming to do that fairly shortly. Thank you so much for watching today. My name is Stu Harrison. This has been Merriam Pianos on YouTube, and if it's the first time that you have seen us, we would really love if you subscribed, particularly if you find the video useful, entertaining, or whatever. Let us know. Give us a comment. We're always coming out with new videos, and so hitting that bell means that you'll know exactly when to come and check out our latest content, and we'd love for you to do so. So thanks so much for watching. Have yourself a great day.